I really do get a kick out of when I see a lot of white America, doing everything they can to figuratively and literally, it seems like, pat themselves on the good old backs and say, you know what? What a star-spangled, awesome country the United States of America is. And look at how far we've come. My God, race relations are so much better than they were 40, 50 years ago. It's an equal and fair playing field for everyone now. How glorious and wonderful it is. Hmm. Now, this would be an instance of being detached from reality. Here is the reality, is that it is true that this country has come a long way in race relations, in particular over the past couple of decades, you could say going back to about 50 years. This is very true. But this is still the same country that was founded primarily off of the basis of the institution of slavery. The subjugation of an entire group of people because of the color of their skin, treating them as inferior, as second-class citizens. We fought a civil war in this country over that very issue. States' rights, my foot. It was about institution of slavery versus abolishment of slavery. And then we transcended from that to getting into Jim Crow segregation, an institutionalized state set of rules that discriminated against groups of people because of the color of their skin. So yes, in theory, you could sit there and say this country has come a long ways from slavery and Jim Crow segregation. And come a long way since the great civil rights fight of the 50s and the 60s. But what is that really saying? There are certain things sometimes that pop up in our culture, in our country, that remind us we still have a very long ways to go. The O.J. Simpson case, the election of President Barack Hussein Obama in his tenure as president, the Trayvon Martin situation. These are things that still expose the deep underlying fundamental problems in race relations in this country between the white America and the rest of America. There's no question about that. Here's something I want to throw out there, and you let me know which one of these two individuals you would classify or assume to be a thug. And I'm doing this for a reason. One individual was born in London, Ontario, Canada. The other individual was born in Compton, California. One individual has dreads. The other individual does not. One individual is black. One individual is white. Now, based off of certain preconceived notions and prejudices that our media over the years in this country has programmed white America to believe in, to buy into, most everybody would sit there and say, who was the thug? They would say the black man with dreads from Compton, California, not the white kid without dreads from London, Ontario, Canada. Fair enough. Who would you rather introduce your daughter to? A guy that has egged houses, drives recklessly through neighborhoods in Ferraris, gets caught speeding, endangers other people's lives, gets arrested for DUI and resisting arrest? Or a guy that graduated with honors, second in his high school class, salutatorian, went on to Stanford, to receive a master's degree, getting a 3.7 GPA. Who would you rather introduce your daughter to? I would almost bet, all wise asses aside, that almost every single one of you would side with the person that went to Stanford and got a 3.7 GPA and graduated with a master's degree. Now, how about this kick in the seat? This individual that I'm talking about was the white person from London, Ontario, Canada that didn't have dreads, and his name is Justin Bieber. And on the other side, the one that graduated second in his high school class with a 4.2 GPA and got like a 1400 on his SAT score, that went to Stanford, was a member of a prestigious fraternity, graduated with a 3.7 GPA, got a master's degree. That was the black man with dreads from Compton, California, Richard Sherman. the cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks, who's found himself in a bit of a controversy over this past week. Isn't it amazing in the way that people talk about these two individuals that have both been in the news this week, the way that people refer to these two individuals, especially in the media, that there seems to be an awful lot of discussion about Richard Sherman exhibiting thug behavior, when all the while, anybody in a fair test would say that Justin Bieber was the one indeed with the doing the cocaine and smoking weed and speeding recklessly in neighborhoods and egging people's houses and getting busted for DUI and resisting arrest. Almost everybody would say that that's the thug behavior. That's not the type of guy that I want to introduce to my daughter. That's not the type of guy that I want my kids to hang around with. You would say that this guy here, the one that went to Stanford, has worked hard his entire life to achieve his dream, probably since he was 5, 6 years old, and has achieved his dream and excels and is the very best at what he does in his line of work. He went to Stanford, graduated with a master's degree. By God, you're like, that's the type of guy that I want my kids looking up to. That's the type of guy that I want my daughter bringing home. White America, does it change if it's Richard Sherman, a black man from Compton, California with dreads? Here's the bottom line. Super Bowl 48 is still a little over a week away. And somehow people don't understand this still. I don't know why. But our national media, and in particular our national sports media, loves to create sensationalistic headlines artificially in order to boost ratings. It's about money, period. What Richard Sherman said in his post-game press conference on Sunday, how is that him demonstrating being a thug? I saw Raiders fans post about him being an idiot, a cretin, and a thug. You're Raiders fans. Do I need to remind you of the Raiders' history as an organization and their reputation? Do I really? Jack Tatum, a guy who once said that he felt no sympathy for paralyzing Darryl Stingley. That same Raiders organization that used to consistently believe in fighting people and hitting people with cheap shots and breaking and bending the rules all over the place. You're going to now say that Richard Sherman's a thug? Eagles fans I saw posted about this. Come on, Philly fans, let's be realistic. You boo Santa Claus. You cheer when Michael Irvin went down with a career-ending injury. You are not the pillars of class. You exhibit as much thug behavior as you like to, kind of impose upon Richard Sherman, saying that's what he did. Aaron Andrews and Fox knew exactly what the hell they were doing. They've got a guy who just comes off the biggest victory of his career and his team's career. They come up to him and ask him specifically about what he did in that last play, and he responded. This is like sending a gladiator into the fucking lion pit back in ancient times, and then immediately afterwards, all of his testosterone and adrenaline is flowing, and you wanted to be calm and be like, both teams played hard, man. Both teams played hard. A lot of credit and love to the San Francisco 49ers. No! Bullshit! This country has become too sanitized and too watered down and too vanilla and too corporate-y. It's boring. If the Super Bowl's major headline was Peyton Manning versus Russell Wilson, where these two upstanding, respectable individuals sat there and just did nothing but heap praise upon one another and talked in a respectful way that everybody was like, oh, that's a good, respectful way to talk, then it would make for an incredibly boring build-up to the Super Bowl. This is like in professional wrestling or any other form of entertainment. You've got to have a good guy and a bad guy. Fox knew what they were doing when they sent Aaron Andrews there. It was their attempt to create a heel, a villain, a bad guy. And Richard Sherman ended up being selected as their poster boy, and now as a result, the Seattle Seahawks have become the heels, the team that America hates, right or wrong. It's kind of ridiculous to me. But it's easy to see. It's plain to see. I don't see how anybody else doesn't see this. In fact, I'm kind of astounded that Richard Sherman even brought himself to have to apologize. I don't know if somebody told him. What is there to apologize for? He didn't sit there and cuss and swear and say he was going to kill Michael Crabtree or any of that crap. He had a heated moment, and he showed his passion for doing what he loves to do. How does this make him a thug? How does this make him an embarrassment? How does this make him bad for the NFL? If anything, this makes him good for the NFL. Somewhere along the way, thug became the new N-word. Because I don't see anybody referring to Justin Bieber as a damn thug when he sure as hell is exhibiting a lot more thuggish behavior than a Richard Sherman. But it's a lot easier with Richard Sherman, isn't it, America? Especially white America. A black man with dreads from Compton, California, who comes on the TV and talks all aggressive and stern and said, "You don't do that. You don't talk about me." Oh, that's thuggish behavior. I tell you what. My kids someday, if they are able to be second in their high school class, pursue their dream, get a master's degree and a 3.7 GPA from Stanford University, and are able to fulfill their lifelong dreams and become millionaires, then I want them to be that type of thug. I want them to look up to Richard Sherman, not some vanilla-ass, stupid teen idol like Justin Bieber exhibiting all types of thug behavior. Yeah. I mean, seriously, this has gotten ridiculous. And it's about high time in this country that we stop sitting there and putting labels on people that make absolutely no sense. And no, sitting there and calling somebody a thug does not make you not racist, especially if they're not exhibiting that thuggish behavior. Richard Sherman is no thug, I assure you. Justin Bieber is. But it's funny again how nobody's going to refer to Justin Bieber as a thug, because he's the white boy without dreads from London, Ontario, Canada. And Richard Sherman, who came up in Compton, California, persevered over all of that to go on to Stanford and get a master's degree and go on to the NFL. That's a thug. You know, this is just like back a decade ago when Justin Timberlake ripped Janet Jackson's top off to reveal her nipple. Now, everybody was supposed to get all up in the arms. The media created a huge sensation about this and made this into a big fucking deal. And I'm supposed to get offended by that. But if I see some 300-pound whale at a grocery store pop out her tit to feed her little runt brat kid, I'm supposed to be okay with that. I don't know about anybody else, but I would rather see Janet Jackson's nipple. I've seen far worse things on news and national television than that. I'd much rather see that than some 300-pound whale pull out her teat so that way she could breastfeed her damn little runt kid. Period. It's just amazing, isn't it? A guy like Richard Sherman is this much closer to achieving the ultimate dream in the NFL, and that is winning a Super Bowl. And instead of people defending him and saying, you know, he was just an emotional guy in the moment, instead of people calling out Fox, they knew what they were doing. If it was such a big deal, why did they interview Richard Sherman again on the freaking stage? This is ridiculous. This is like white America continues, even though they don't want to admit it deep down. This is them wanting to sit there and find justifications for those systematic prejudices and discriminations that they've been taught over the years to say, yeah, you know what? That's exactly it. He's a thug. He's a thug. We're not going to use the N-word anymore. He's a thug. Well, I point the finger right back at white America. Why don't you look at Justin Bieber? And why don't you point at him and go thug. But you won't do that though, will you? I fully support Richard Sherman. I hope he continues to act like this. We need characters in this world. We need characters in this country. We need different types of personalities. Not everybody has to be the same and fit the same damn mold. If my kids end up someday being like Richard Sherman and graduating second in their high school class, getting a master's degree from Stanford, and going on to achieve their dream and become millionaires, then I'll be as proud of them as I possibly can be. I'd much rather have my kids grow up like Richard Sherman than Justin Bieber.